Now let's look at the ACSM recommendations for resistance training. So these can get a little complicated, and this is the new guidelines recommendation. So frequency, frequency, intensity, time, type, and then we have a couple other things. Repetition, sets, once again, pattern and progression. Frequency, this is health-related fitness. So to get the health benefits that we talked about in class the other day, each major muscle group should be trained 2 to 3 days per week. So 2 days is the minimum. 48 hours rest in between workouts. Free intensity, this is going to vary depending on who your client is. 60 to 70% 1 RM, moderate to vigorous for novice to intermediate exercisers. So you have somebody who's starting out, 60 to 70% is going to be great. And if you look a little bit down the table, 8 to 12 repetitions. If you are working with 8 to 12 repetitions, then you're probably going to be within that range. Now go higher than 80% or more 1 RM, vigorous to very vigorous for people who are experienced weightlifters, experienced resistance trainers to improve strength. 40 to 50% 1 RM, beginner exercisers. So 40% would be very light. Less than 50% 1 RM is going to improve muscle endurance. So ability to do sustained contractions, submaximal contractions over time. So the intensity is going to vary widely on who your population is. So if you've got a young, healthy person, they're just not very active right now, 60 to 70%, maybe even up to 80% of 1 RM is going to be great. Eventually having them work up to there. People who are advanced, if you work out, you can do 80% of 1 RM. Time. When they say time, they mean the duration of effectiveness. So the amount of time of the workout, but also looking at the amount of time of the repetition. In the past, Nautilus has recommended that people do 2 seconds on the concentric, 4 seconds on the eccentric. Their studies have shown that there's no real need to have a specific time on each repetition cadence. So as long as you are not throwing the weight around and using momentum, doing a longer speed set versus a shorter speed set is not going to make any difference. And if you've ever done anything like super slow, or you maybe have done a set where it's a 6 to 10 second concentric and eccentric, it's great, but you have to really take the intensity down to do that. So that's another way to vary a workout on somebody. Type, resistance exercise, major muscle groups, multi-joint, single joint, do a mix of both of those. Does your body care? Resistance training, machines versus free weights. That's also going to depend on the client. Some people are going to be much more comfortable on machines, especially if they're starting out, although they find machines confusing, than somebody who's working with free weights. And free weights are going to have a balance concern that not everybody's going to be able to handle. And as we mentioned with repetitions, 8 to 12 repetitions is usually sufficient. And that works out to about 60, 70, maybe even up to 80% of 1 RM. If you have older adults, 10 to 15 repetitions for middle-aged and older adults, and then 15 to 20 repetitions for muscular endurance. But, when we talk about overload, it needs to be challenging repetitions. So you don't have to take people to a complete failure on their repetitions, but it needs to be challenging so that the last couple repetitions are difficult. But it does not have to be complete failure, because I'm sure you see a lot of people in the gym, they do their 10 repetitions, but they're not 10 challenging repetitions. So you can get a lot more bang for your buck in your workout if you actually make your repetitions challenging repetitions. 2 to 4 sets are recommended for each exercise to improve strength and power. There are some studies and some of the work we did at Virginia Tech. A single set can be effective, but you have to make sure it's a really good set. If you're only doing one set, it better be pretty much perfect. And, 2 sets, up to 2 sets are effective in improving muscular endurance. Pattern, the rest interval pattern, 2 to 3 minutes between sets. And as we talked about previously with the frequency, 48 hours between muscle groups. So if people get more advanced as we move on to progression, so you can add more repetitions per set. You can add frequency, so you could go from 2 to 3 days a week, maybe to do a 4-day split routine where upper body is trained 2 days a week and lower body's trained 2 days a week. That's if people want that, because time is not necessary, is going to be a factor, and people just don't have all day to spend in the gym. So, if you can keep them in a resistance training program that's, going to take less than an hour, 30 minutes even better, 8 to 10 exercises, hit the major muscle groups in something that doesn't take a whole lot of time, they're going to be real successful with that.